My name is Joe Prim, and I am the host of Prepare.Defend.Lead. In this episode, we are going to get into Chapter 4 of my new book, Open. We are going to be talking about hearing versus listening in the chapter titled, Open Your Ears. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around, and I'll catch you on the other side of the intro.
The comfort and distractions of today collide to indulge our desires and provide a slow death by apathy. A superior primitive ethos exists. Prepare for tomorrow. Defend what you value and lead those you love. This mindset is the foundation of living an authentic life as a bold, disciplined man resolute in your mission. Prepare, defend, lead. Your mission. Own it.
All right, welcome back. If you listen to this podcast regularly, we have been going through the last few episodes, the chapters of my new book, Open. We started with Chapter 2, which is Open Your Mind. Last week, we did an episode on Chapter 3, which was Open Your Eyes. And in this week, we're going to do a review, just kind of look over and maybe dig a little deeper in a few spots and read some parts of the book, Open Your Ears. So it has been a whirlwind here in the Prim household. A lot of different things going on, and it's always those little things that can pile up that seem to stay on the to-do list for far too long. And I took off Monday and Tuesday of this week. Tuesday, which is today, was my son's birthday, and wanted to make sure that I spent some quality time with him because things have been so crazy the last couple years for us. So I wanted to spend some time with him, make sure that he understands how important he is to this family. Just turned 10, and even the reason I bring that up, because I really don't talk much about my family on this podcast, is because Open Your Ears chapter starts out with a story about him. And it's funny as I kind of glance over that story as it's sitting in front of me right now and think back how many years ago that was and how fast time flies. And there's no more obvious evidence that's always in front of you than when you have children and you see them day by day and those years just tick away year by year by year. So always on birthdays, it's a good time to think about the good and the great and the regrets and leverage those thoughts and those memories to press forward, to improve where you need to improve, and take up a new mantle as your children grow older and your role as a father changes in their life. So interesting times here in our family. Homestead 2.0 is getting very, very close. Almost a ranch is really, really close. We've been going out there regularly. In fact, we went out there twice this last weekend. We went out on Saturday, and the painters were busy working, so we wanted to stay out of their way. So we went back again on Sunday to see the progress and see how far along things are, and we're moving in the right direction. They had told us that we could go ahead and get the mover scheduled for the 8th of May, and it's funny, in life I equate often to being on a roller coaster, and there are times in life where you feel like you're ratcheting up that incline, waiting to get to the top for a big drop that's going to occur. And sometimes that ratcheting and that clicking and clacking as you raise up that incline seems to last a long, long time, and other times it's too short. And sometimes you feel like you're really hitting that corkscrew hard, or you're hitting that loop. And for me right now, it really feels like we are headed into that tunnel. A lot of change coming up. A lot of things will be different once we get into this move and we try to get situated once again in a new place, a new location, meet new people, and this is going to be an epic change for us. Probably even more so than settling in at the homestead there in Illinois, just because things are different here in Texas. There's different threats on this piece of property. There's different things that we never had to worry about in the past, whether that just be snakes and scorpions and fire ants, but also different pressure from different types of pests, dealing with the realities of water down here and how that plays a completely different role in how plants live and die and survive in this climate down here. And we do have, on this property where we're going to be at, we do have some active animals that will be threats, from bobcats to cougars to wild boar. And wild boar is probably the one that worries me the most, and something that we need to take a lot of consideration and a lot of precaution about, because those buggers can get big and they can get aggressive, and they can be real, more than just a nuisance. They can be a real danger. So we'll be thinking things through about how we equip ourselves for these different threats and how we set ourselves up in order to thrive. Definitely not one that goes into things just hoping for the best. We will, as always, come up with some game plans and some rules and be disciplined in what we do and how we do it, so that we can put ourselves in a situation to succeed. Definitely will be utilizing Big Brutus in a different way than he was originally intended to. At the old place, it was really his job from the time he was a puppy. He never went in the house. He was out watching the goats, and that was his main task, and he operated and functioned very well in that task of keeping an eye on them and keeping the coyotes at bay there in Illinois. And last couple of years, he's really adjusted well to living inside of the climate-controlled house and becoming a more important part of our family. And I think that he will have a different type of role of watching over his boy and his girl. And I think that this time where he is spent with much more attachment to our family will end up being a good thing. And as he spends time outside with them, I think he will do a great job helping keep an eye on them and keeping predators at bay, because he is a big boy with a big bark and a bad bite, and he does a great job of keeping an eye on what's going on. You can just tell when he's outside in his element there, when he's on the property, and he's always alert, always looking around to see what's going on. He'll scan the horizon. He might lay down for a little bit, and you might think that he's sleeping, but there's not going to take much to get his attention back up again. So we'll utilize the tools that we have, and we will invest in the new tools that we need in order for us to survive in those new conditions. So for me, I'm always up for the challenge, always looking for something new, but at points in my life, I feel like I'm at the brink of how many different challenges I can take on at one time. And I feel like as we're heading into, as I mentioned before, kind of a tunnel, kind of at that point where I need a tremendous amount of focus to figure out what our best moves are in these different areas and to make the right choices, because there are a lot of choices that are going to be made in the next couple months and in these past couple months that have that weigh a lot. That have weighed a lot on me, and those decisions and how we go about conducting ourselves and moving forward as a family will resonate for years to come. So it's a good thing. I'm really excited about it. It is most definitely a dream come true. But with anything that you get outside of your comfort zone, anytime that you're pushing yourself outside of what people are normally going about in this modern world in which we live, you're going to take some risks, and at the same time you will receive the rewards that go along with that. So, Overland Project, I'll probably do an episode at some point coming up here to get more in depth and all the work that's been done there and kind of the vision and the steps that we'll be doing with the PDL Budget Overland Project moving forward. But the big thing is I did get some new tires on that, on the Montero, and to be honest with you, with the maintenance that's been done on it and those new tires, it is a very, very, very capable vehicle right now. The reality is I could probably stop right now in the project and feel very confident in where I can go, what I can do, and still have a daily driver out of the deal, but be able to go pretty much anywhere that I would ever need to go, especially with the new tires. We'll get into that a little bit later as far as the choice of tires that I made and why I went with what I went with, but I'm very, very, very pleased so far with these Kumo MT71s. So with kind of some updates and some thoughts out of the way, I'm going to jump into the main part of this episode. As you listen, if this book sounds of interest to you, I'm going to hit on most of the book as I do these episodes. The reality is I want to get these thoughts, I want to get these ideas out there to people like you that are listening to this podcast. But if you want to learn a little bit more, if you want to get in on all the stories in the book, if you want to help support what's going on here and keep this thing moving forward, you can purchase the book either at Prepare.Defend.Lead.com, or you can purchase the book on Kindle or on paperback now up at Amazon.com. So I'm excited about that. And the May 1st, I will be getting my first paperback copies of the book in. That will be cool. That I'm excited about that. I'm excited about holding that book in my hand and celebrating the accomplishment of one of the big goals that I had on my list for this year. So at Prepare.Defend.Lead.com, you can also find T-shirts and some coffee mugs on there that you can purchase that would help support this podcast so that I'm not paying every month out of my pocket to keep this thing moving forward. So, as I mentioned, this chapter starts out with a story about my son who just celebrated his 10th birthday. Obviously, this story is from quite a few years ago. So, several years ago when my son was just learning how to speak and answer questions, he would call a restaurant a what you want. He called it that for several months, and whenever we went out to eat, we figured it was just how he pronounced it, as he had difficulty saying his R sounds. Or that was what we thought he was saying. It became a family joke, and we soon all started referring to restaurants as what you wants, and we often still do. One fall day, as I was kneeling down in front of him and I was zipping up his little jacket, I asked him, what is the name of the place where we go out to eat? And his simple reply was, a what you want. I then asked him, why do you call it a what you want? He told me very clearly, as if I was a complete idiot, when you go to that place, the lady asks you what you want. I will never forget that moment with my son. I was sure that he was just too young to pronounce something correctly until I took a minute to ask a simple question and listen to his answer. I then realized that it made sense calling it a what you want. In fact, maybe it makes more sense calling it a what you want than calling a restaurant. My son taught me a valuable lesson in understanding the difference between listening and hearing. Let's begin by defining listening and hearing. The definition of hearing. Hearing is an action in which a sound is perceived by the ear. Little or no effect is recorded as your mind may be occupied by other thoughts, or perhaps you are engaged in different tasks while other people are sharing their thoughts with you. This is a passive process. So hearing is passive, right? We hear cars go by, we hear traffic, we hear dogs barking in the neighborhood, we hear birds singing, we don't listen to those things. They're just something that we hear. And because there's something here, a lot of times we phase them out. We hear them, but we've paid very little attention. Versus the definition of listening. Listening is an action in which you choose to actively concentrate on what you hear. You need to put in a lot of effort in terms of attention, processing, thinking, and analyzing. You do not think about anything else or engage in other tasks, but instead intentionally listen to what the speaker is saying. You notice the feelings and the meaning of what is being said. It is an active process. I think Stephen Covey summed it up very well when he said, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They simply listen with the intent to reply. Or I would probably say they simply hear with the intent to reply. Multitasking is not possible if you want maximum results. It is impossible to do a great job at something, to truly focus on something while doing something else. Often I find myself busy doing other things while my children are trying to speak to me. Rather than taking a few minutes, listening to what they have to say, or asking a few questions, deciphering the point that was trying to be made, and then getting back to the task at hand, I find myself paying more attention to other things and less attention to what is truly the most important to me. If you ask me what was the most important thing to me, my family, an email, or changing the oil, or taking care of the goats, of course my answer would be my family. But yet they are not always getting the focus that they deserve through simply listening and being present. I feel that it is necessary to listen to what my wife or my children have to say versus the other things that I may be trying to accomplish and get done. Here is something written by Dr. Scott Peck that illustrates what I'm saying. An essential part of true listening is the discipline of bracketing, the temporary giving up or setting aside of one's own prejudices, frames of reference, and desires so as to experience, as far as possible, the speaker's world from inside, to step in his or her shoes. The unification of speaker and listener is actually an extension of ourselves, and new knowledge is always gained from this. Moreover, since true listening involves bracketing, a setting aside of the self, it also temporarily involves a total acceptance of the other. Sensing this acceptance, the speaker will feel less and less vulnerable and more inclined to open up the inner recesses of his or her mind to the listener. Isn't that what we want from our family? Them to open up and share how they really feel about things, what's really going on with them. But that can't happen and doesn't happen unless you are paying attention and listening. And the same goes with friends that aren't necessarily your closest friends. It's still important to listen to what they have to say. Very few people in our culture listen. Everybody is focused on what's happening next, or what else could I be getting done. If you are that one person that actually listens and asks questions that will make a difference to that person and their opinion of you and how they deal with you. So again, hearing is passive, listening is with intent. So how do we go about this? Number one, observe the nonverbal behavior. Is the person crying? Are they upset? Are they angry? Number two, focus. Don't do other things while you're listening. Put down your phone. Give people your complete attention. Number three, acknowledge the message even if you don't agree with it. That way people know that you're listening and following along. Number four, respect. Let the speaker finish before you interrupt. Tell them you understand. Let them finish, and then you can proceed to ask questions to clarify things. Where would you be today, Or where would you be 6 months from now if you simply started to listen? If you gave others the opportunity to honestly share their thoughts and concerns without judgment, but with interest and empathy. Could simply listening change the world that you find yourself in today? Can you clearly see the personal cost in your life of not listening? I hope that through this chapter you can see the clear and quick benefit you can have in your life by employing the power of listening. You have the power to build deeply rooted relationships. It all starts with listening. And then we'll jump into some action steps here. Number 1, write down the cost of lack of listening on your 3 closest relationships. Action step 2, engage with some people that are important to you by listening and asking questions to clarify what they are saying. This will be difficult. Do it anyway. Number 3, write down your thoughts on these conversations. Answer a few questions such as, how did they feel? Angry, frustrated, bored, mind wandering? How did you feel? Surprised, interested, honest, important? How can you improve opening your ears? So that's a quick overview of chapter 4 in the book, Open Your Ears, and the importance of listening to what other people have to say versus thinking that we know what people have to say before they say it. And it's lessons like these in listening that are why I say in this book, these 6 life-changing principles are easy to implement, but difficult to master. Because even though I learned this lesson years ago from my son as I zipped up his little jacket and he taught me the lesson of listening and asking questions rather than just assuming that I knew the point he was trying to make, or that he just couldn't speak correctly, or he was too young to know what he was saying. And I was wrong in all those points. Me and my great adult wisdom, right? Completely wrong. And he had a reason why he called it a what you want, and he had a valid reason why he called it a what you want. But not until I asked the questions, not until I listened to the answer, not until I was present and focused on him did I learn that lesson. And now, all these years later, like I said, as we celebrate his 10th birthday today, all these years later, this is still something that I'm learning, still something that I'm working on, because these 6 principles in these book will always be changing. They will always be evolving with you. They will always be goals that you can strive to become better at. Yeah, I learned that lesson back then, and that lesson sticks with me, and that lesson is something I think about on a regular basis. But yet, at times, I still don't listen with the intent that I need to. I still am focused on doing a podcast or doing work or getting involved in other things versus giving them, those in my family, those that are friends and extended family, the time that they deserve. And we live in such a fast-paced world where we're always trying to do more. Like I just said, I took off 4 days in a row here, 2 days off of work, plus the weekend to get caught up on some of these things and to have some time to celebrate with my son. But the reality is, I'm always trying to do more. I'm always trying to get more done. And while this has served me in many, many ways, it also makes it that much more difficult to listen. So that's really the point of these 6 principles in these book, is that you will never outgrow them. These 6 principles can be taught to a 6-year-old, and somebody that started working on these principles at 6 years old would still, at 66 years old, still have a ways to go, still have a challenge to become better at these 6 principles. And listening for me is one of those that, because of the principles, is always on my mind. And because of learning these principles and spending so much time thinking about them and writing about them and meditating on them and praying about them, that it's always on my mind, it's always there. So whenever I'm giving a cold shoulder to somebody that I love to take care of something that could probably be held off on, I'm reminded of that. I'm reminded of that little lesson that I was taught so many years ago. So, am I perfect at it? No. That's what I'm trying to say. These will always be something that, a goal where the goalpost keeps on moving. It will stay just ahead of you, because you can always become better. You can always become better at asking questions. You can always become better at listening. You can always become better at trying to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, especially somebody that you disagree with, especially somebody that you could otherwise clash with. But even those that disagree with you need to be listened to, especially those in your family. And by giving them the time to listen to what they have to say, even if you completely disagree, some of those people that you give the time to speak their mind and to really share what they're thinking, a lot of these people will quickly realize the folly of their ways. It's just they've never been put in a position to put out their ideas, to talk through why they think the way they think or why they feel the way they feel. And when people are never given an opportunity to speak through, to mentally walk through their opinions or why they value what they value or why they believe one thing is right versus another thing, when they've never had to go through that obstacle of just answering some simple questions, a lot of times those people never form realistic, real, hardened ideas or positions on things. All they have are bumper sticker slogans, and they can parrot a few paragraphs from somebody else. They become an echo chamber by simply asking questions, by simply trying to understand. And if you can, and I talk about this in the book, I didn't share it in this reading here, but I find that one of the best ways to fight that anger, or even in some of you might be a hate, or you despise the way that other people feel about things, or their values, or their opinions, that one of the best ways to kind of get around that, to work around that, and still have some sort of relationship is to be curious. And it's very difficult to be bitterly angry with somebody and curious at the same time. And if you can switch gears and switch into curious mode and curiosity mode, if you can switch into that mode and just ask questions so that you can gain some understanding. And even if that understanding is only so that you know better how to fight an idea, or you know better how to convince people of your side, to influence people in your direction because you understand where these people are coming from, then so be it. But if you can switch modes from anger mode into curious mode and use that curiosity to hopefully both your advantage and the advantage of the other person, by allowing them to speak their mind, allowing them to hear what they actually are saying that they believe, and showing them that you care enough to listen, you can gain a lot of knowledge. And hopefully, especially, there are people out there who have severe disagreements in thousands of different ways with people that they actually really do love and care about. And when those people come into their life, whether it be on the holidays or whether it be maybe each and every night as somebody in your family comes back home, and you can get into that mode of despising them, of hating them for their beliefs or the way that they're living out their life. And if you can switch that off for a little while and switch into curiosity mode and just trying to understand why they feel the way they feel or where they're coming from or what their deeper feelings are on things, I think it can be of great benefit not only to you but also to the other person. Just some thoughts that I wanted to throw out there besides what I wrote in the book. Again, you can find open at Prepare.Defend.Lead.com or on Amazon, on Kindle, and now on paperback. Like I said, most of the book I'm sharing here in these podcasts because I want to get these principles out there. The whole intent of writing that book is to reach more people, to reach different people, and I hope by sharing on this podcast that this resonates with some people, that each episode where I'm sharing something a little bit different, that it's kind of that poke in the back or that poke in the gut to rethink things just a little bit in your life, or to look at things just a little bit differently, or to value something a little bit more, or maybe value something a little bit less. That if I can get you just to question things just a little bit of the way that you're living, the way that you're going about things every single day, day in and day out, it just keeps going forward in a certain direction. If I can get you just a little bit to start to ask some questions of yourself, or to start to look at things a little bit differently, and start to open up your mind, and start to open up your eyes, and start to open up your ears, I know that you can make some changes very quickly that can have a tremendous impact not only on you, but on your children and on your wife and in your place of work and in your community, that you can start to be a bigger and greater influence on those around you in a positive way. And that's the goal here. That's what I want to try to do. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you get anything out of this podcast, and you feel it's worth spending a couple of your valuable minutes to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast, it would be greatly appreciated. Your review, your honest, heartfelt review, might just be the reason why somebody else checks out this podcast. And hopefully, you leave that review, somebody else tunes into and takes a chance on downloading this podcast, and they listen to it, and maybe they have a positive breakthrough, something changes in their life, something clicks, they see something to start moving in a little bit different direction, and it has a positive impact, maybe not just on them, but maybe on their kids or their wife, or up into their community. So that's the goal here. So if you got some time, if you can spare a couple moments just to write up a quick review on iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. If you take a couple minutes and just share this podcast with somebody that you think might want to listen to something like this, that this could be an encouragement to them, that would be greatly appreciated as well. And as always, hold fast, and God bless.